And I think that's a really hard lesson to learn. It's something I'm learning, is like you can have all these feelings about something. It's not going to change anything. And you just have to be okay with the fact that this is your reaction to it. And you can't let it consume you, or else you might just drown.
Where are the quiet gays? Where are the quiet gays supposed to go? That was not the audition.
Okay, tell me that was a chiropractor.
Yes.
Okay, I've had that happen to me before. Are you okay? Feeling okay?
This has been hurting me for like weeks and weeks. And it hurts to breathe. And it hurts.
Yeah.
I can't like
have a
lay
rib out.
down. Yeah. It's like right here. I can't lay down. It hurts to breathe. It like just hurts.
The chiropractor will fix that right up.
I'm so scared.
Why?
Because it hurts to put any pressure on it. So I'm
they're gonna fix it. I normally have to get like an emergency appointment. I feel your pain. Mine's normally in the front though, so it feels like it's like jutting into my lungs. So it's like really bad. Oh my God, Haylie.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was, and I was describing it to my mom, and she was like, "Haylie, I think your rib is out." I'm like, "What?" I don't even know how that would have happened.
I have no idea. I've had it like 2 or 3 times in my life, and it's been the most excruciating pain.
Yeah, it's not pleasant.
Mm-mm.
So anyway.
Well, there we go. Why are you so hot?
I don't know. Is this menopause?
Probably. God, I wish I was in menopause because then I'd be closer to death.
Oh, that's terrible.
I'm over it, Haylie.
Lauren's not in a good mood.
No, I'm not.
Oh, no.
Whatever. Okay. Anyway, welcome everyone to...
Hi.
We're in great moods. Haylie's got a rib out and I have to deal with medical stuff. So it's super fun. Welcome to Lesbian Book Club, where we are normally much happier and cheerier, and we promise to make it a fun show for you guys. I'm Lauren, and I'm here with my very fun and not in pain co-host, Haylie.
Hey, guys.
Just a rib
you can't
out.
see, but I'm doing a fun little dance with my shoulders.
Well, maybe you should not do that.
Fun people do. No, my shoulders are intact.
Okay, just your ribs out.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to get that fixed. Today we are covering Cascade by Julia Hannafin. And I believe Julia uses they, them pronouns. So we will be referring to Julia with they, them pronouns. And we are so excited to talk about it. I read like 80 pages yesterday and then the rest of it today. I was supposed to do it over on my camping trip this weekend, but I didn't have time to read. So I finished it up yesterday and today, and I loved it. What did you think?
It was good. I felt like okay. I did not even know the main character's name for the longest time because I just thought that I was the main character because of the way that Julia wrote this. I did, notice that there was a name at some point, but I immediately forgot it.
You just implanted yourself into the story?
I think it's not even that I was there. It was just that the way that this is written, it's very, it's very internalized. Mm-hmm. Like everything is from inside of this person's mind and body.
Yeah.
And this is a character that is very, everything gets internalized and then is just shifting and churning around in there. So that's where the reader is the entire time too. So I felt like I was also getting churned around inside of this girl's mind, and so I was like, here I am, and this is what my mind is like too. I'm getting shifted and churned around inside my own mind. So I was like, yes, here I am.
I feel that a lot. It was to me, this book was like really visceral. Like you really felt like you were there in like all these, like in the cabin and in the, like on the islands and on the boat. Like, I feel like the way Julia wrote this, it was so visceral. Mm-hmm. I felt like like the mist coming in, their like sweaty bodies. Like I literally was like, I know what this feels, tastes, smells like. And so that's kind of how I got lost into it too, and how I was able to read it so fast because I am not a fast reader. I am an audiobook girl. So for me, I enjoyed, and the writing like made me cry. Parts of it, I was just like, this is like so beautifully written. I can't wait to get into it. Yeah,
You
that was
know those movie theaters that are like 5D?
yeah. They have one at like Disneyland, the one with the bugs.
Oh, I
D-
don't know. I haven't been in there.
Oh my God, Haylie, this happens once an episode.
I know. Well, okay, I've actually never been in a movie theater like that, but and I actually wasn't sure that they were real for the longest time because I feel like growing up, they were just when I was a kid, they were just starting to be real, but it was
Hmm.
kind of like a sci-fi thing. And there were all these stories getting published where they were almost horror where it was like, "Oh yeah."
Oh.
And then it was, you know, they wanted you to feel like how this feels. And so then they slashed you apart. And I'm like, oh no. And so, anyway, that obviously wasn't real, but this is how I imagined them in my mind. And apparently they are real and they don't slash you apart. So don't worry, everyone.
No, just at
But,
Disneyland, it's like a bug movie. And so like they make your seat like creepy crawl under you and you're like, oh, the
ah,
bugs. Or like they blow mist at you. Or I think there's like a bug fart and they like make it smell bad. So
huh, ew. I was thinking about this on the pier
mhm.
yesterday. I will bring this back in. This makes sense in my mind. But I was thinking about this on the pier yesterday. I was at the Santa Monica pier, and there was, wind blowing through my hair, and it was like a little chilly, but it was also hot, and the sun was beating down
Mm,
on me, and I was like, I wonder you know, if I was watching a movie and I was in one of those movie theaters, what they would make it like, because also it was so incredibly overstimulating. Like there was a roller coaster that went over the
yeah.
top of me, and everybody is so loud, and there's a man being creepy over there, and then there's babies screaming, and there's just so much noise. And I'm like, okay, are they in a viewership, experience? Are they going to think about, well, we want them to feel like they're really there, so we're gonna really put them in the deep end here, and we're gonna blast this wind through their hair, and we're gonna make the babies cry, and we're gonna infuse the smell of fish guts, and we're gonna all this stuff, or are
Mhm.
they gonna be like, oh, a gentle breeze and the smell of funnel cake and the occasional light roller coaster sound. Like, what are they going to do? Anyway, back to how this relates to
I think
Julia's
you
book.
missed your calling though. I think you missed your calling and you should be a designer of these 5D theaters.
Oh, I really had a hot minute where I thought I was going to design soundscapes for hospitals
Wow.
because, yeah, because fun fact about me, I've spent a lot of time in there because my little sister had cancer, and the she's fine, everyone, don't panic.
I
But
had no reaction because I knew that. I was just
yeah.
waiting. I was like, and
Um,
continue.
yeah. Scary times, but she's good now, and we love her very much. But the hospital sounds are just terrible, and you
Mhm.
hear, especially when you're at a pediatric unit, you hear like very sad sounds. And so I thought about that a lot. And I'm like, you know what? We need to get some cute little rainforest sounds, or just things that make people feel better.
Mhm. That's
Anyway,
cute.
yeah.
That's cute.
But this book felt like one of those movies. And then
Mhm.
I'm thinking about, like, okay, if I were in a 5D theater of Cascade, it would be really uncomfortable.
Definitely. This whole book, I think this book was like made to make us feel uncomfortable or written because I think the main character was so uncomfortable the whole time. Okay, let's get into it then. Oh,
Think
wow.
positive. Meow.
Haley's holding up her coffee cup and it says think positive, which is like, I feel like an indictment on me right now. I am not positive, but it's okay. It'll be fine. The world continues. The world continues spinning. Time is just a construct. Okay. Let's talk about Cascade. So we have a surprise for everyone in that Julia will be coming on our podcast to talk about this. So we will have another author interview in the next week or two, which we're so excited about. And Julia is so lovely. And I this was so cool to get a glimpse into their mind because and I have my first question is how autobiographical is this? Because it seems very autobiographical from the things that I know about Julia, but I could be wrong. Nick, I just want to know how much is fiction and how much is nonfiction. So we'll talk about this in a fictiony way until we can get Julia on the pod. Because wow, if this is what I think it is, in that it's somewhat autobiographical, boy, do I have questions. So,
Wow. I'm really excited to talk to Julia because I don't know them other
mhm.
than when, you introduced me to them at uh
Founders.
yeah, we were watching some basketball at the bar and I talked to a dog whose name is not Steven. No, its name is
Well,
just Steve.
Steve, but you
And the next time I saw not Steven, everybody was giggling at me because I was calling it Steven, which apparently is not even its full government name. It's just Steve.
it's just
So
Steve and he loves turkey. So
he loves
yeah,
turkey,
it's
which
very
I
that
also
was
do. So
funny.
we bond over that. But um, anyway, Julia was with not Steven, and I met them, and that's all I know about Julia.
I can't wait to talk to them. It's going to be so much fun. So do we want to do like a quick rundown and then we can talk about all of our favorite parts? Because I definitely did some note taking within my book. I love to write in my books actually. Because you know
Mhm.
why? I think it's fun if I ever like donate my books or if like I give them to someone to read. I like that my notes are in there and they can get a glimpse into what I was thinking while I was reading. So maybe that's why they started this podcast because I like to tell people how I feel about books. So yeah, I did a lot of note taking. I have a lot of things to say, but maybe we do a quick rundown. Do you want to give like a synopsis?
Yeah, let's do a synopsis and we can go back.
Okay.
So, Cascade, our main character, Lydia. Lydia is fresh out of high school and decides to take a year before going into Berkeley. And we aren't really totally sure what's happened, but we do get the sense that she's experienced a loss. And she is on a boat on her way to these islands. She goes to these islands with a small crew to perform some research over the summer. What they're doing is they're researching sharks that are there over the mating season. And what that entails is tracking the sharks, waiting for them to come near the boat, and holding this dummy seal thing out of the water, then tagging them with a temporary tag, and then they get to watch the data. And this happens every summer while the sharks are in the area of the islands. And Ju- or
Yeah, see it is. Lydia.
and Lydia is out on this island with Michael, who is her ex-boyfriend's father, and he seems to kind of be the lead researcher of this crew. And then there's Captain, who drives the boat, and he's very knowledgeable about these islands. He's worked here, it seems, most of his entire adult life
Mhm.
in some form or another. And then there is
Zeke.
Zeke, and then there is Zeke, and Zeke is kind of he's a student also at Berkeley. He's young and he's doing a lot of the note taking, kind of like an intern position, but
Mhm. Kind of feels
he's
like the same like job as Lydia, really. That was
yeah,
kind of the
just
picture.
just he knows a lot more than
Mm-hmm.
her. Like he's clearly been out here and done this before. He might have
Right.
done this, the summer before. So she's out here with these men, and this is very isolated from the rest of the world. She doesn't really have contact with anybody back home. She develops different relationships with all of these men.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because we're seeing her develop all these very different relationships with these three men, but also she's like taking this time on the islands to discover herself a little bit, which I feel like is a pretty relatable topic, especially right outside of high school. But I felt like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if there was a lot of gender seeking, like trying to understand her own gender during this book, which I thought was really interesting. And I can't wait to talk to Julia about it. As somebody who hasn't ever like questioned their own gender, it was a really cool peek into like that mind and process because with Zeke, she feels like a very familial tie and like they share a cabin. And so she's like, they feel like brothers, which is really interesting. And it's like, well, that internal feeling of feeling different than like your outward gender, but in your mind as a brother to someone, even though you were like born genetically female, was very interesting to me. And she develops a really good friendship with Zeke, which kind of gets a little messed up a little later on in the book. And then as we go further into the book, though, the relationship that I really enjoyed learning about the most was her relationship with herself and how she was like navigating this loss of one of her moms. And to me, that through line of the book, I thought was so beautiful. And like, I feel like it was like a take on grief and how, she would be talking about, sharks and what they did that day. And then all of a sudden she'd be like, and my mom is still gone. And to me, I feel like that's so representative of how grief feels of like you're doing something and then it just like hits you.
Yeah.
And the way she was dealing with that and the way she was explaining her mom's relationship together and everything to me was like so beautiful and like heart-wrenching at the same time. And like, yes, I loved learning about Michael and Captain and Zeke, but I was like, who is Lydia? Why is she here? What is she trying to prove to herself? What is she trying to learn? And also, like, what hole is she trying to fill in her life? Which obviously is the loss of her mom, Blake. So she fills this hole with a lot of different things while she's out there, which I can't wait to talk about. But what's really cool, so going back to kind of like synopsis of the plot is, they're out tagging these sharks and there is a shark attack by these two orcas that came and attacked this shark, Angela, in this like really brutal way, which is like orcas are crazy. Do you see the story over the summer of the orcas like attacking fishing boats and like sinking them?
Yeah.
I saw the funniest tweet that was like, I am entering the orca war on the side of the orcas.
Yeah.
But that really derails the whole kind of expedition, I guess, like the research expedition, because once there's an orca attack, white sharks like they leave because they're not like gonna mess with the orcas. And that's like really devastating for the whole like endeavor because there aren't sharks to watch anymore. And I want to know if that's like some big overarching metaphor of like something really big and catastrophic happening. And then like, I don't know, like then people have to leave and then there's this big empty hole. I don't know. I feel like I'm like reading a lot into it, but I don't know.
No,
I
I think
just,
you're onto something because this was a very heavily metaphorical book.
yeah, it felt like it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and I felt like a lot of like the action points happened in this book, like after that shark attack. We can just get into it. I'm hoping that all of our people listening have read it, but after the shark attack, Michael and Lydia kiss on the boat, which I was like, oh, that is your ex-boyfriend's father. What is going on? So that was a shocker to
Ooh,
me.
basic girl.
Oh my God, it was crazy. Like we just find out a lot about these characters after this pivotal point in the book and how they deal with, the different set of rules and things that they're going to do now that the sharks have left. So,
I want to talk about the way that Julia used animals in this book. Specifically, the way that Lydia connects animals with people.
okay.
I think that Lydia equates certain animals to certain people, and these animals become metaphors.
Oh, dang. Tell us who. I didn't get this at all.
Well, so this it started out like very just stated very bluntly in the first opening sentence with the starfish,
Oh yeah.
which was just really beautiful. It says, "There is a starfish that sees with the surface of its body. The brittle star doesn't have eyes defined by little globes cased in eyelids. Its whole body sees. To see itself, then, is just to interact with the world, to move through it. I wish I could live this way." Um, which, oh, that really first gives you insight into this character in that she cannot just move through the world as she is,
Hmm.
and in living in her body, that tells you immediately that she is very caught up in her mind, most likely,
Oh
which we,
yeah.
we go on to see that. But then as the book goes on, she also kind of equates herself with a shark often.
Hmm. Okay, I did get this. Never mind. I know what you're talking about now. Yes, I did pick up these metaphors. I'm not that stupid.
The first time where she references herself as a shark, um, is she talks about herself being a baby shark, and this is when she's asking Michael what happens if she accidentally feeds a shark plastic. Like if
Mm.
she doesn't pull the dummy out of the water fast enough and it eats the dummy, what happens if it ingests all this plastic? And so then I'm thinking like, well, did somebody fuck up and feed her plastic? And then like in a
Yeah.
metaphorical
Yeah.
sense,
Yeah.
and then ask her to get close again,
Mm.
because that's what's that's what her question really is that if she messes up and feeds the shark plastic and then keeps asking it to get close, will it ever get close again?
Mm.
And what are the consequences if she feeds the shark plastic? And then she goes on to like draw this comparison between herself and the shark. And so, yeah, I'm just thinking like, well, okay, who did something to her where they intentionally or not fed her plastic, metaphorically,
Right. Did something harmful.
and then expected her to keep being close to them,
Mm. Hmm.
which later we find out the whole backstory of her mom, Blake, who suffers from addiction.
Hmm.
And that whole thing, too, I think the way that Julia wrote was just so beautiful because it never comes up fully. We never understand what that backstory is until this chapter that's almost in the very end of the book. And then we just get the whole thing all at once.
Hmm.
And this book is written in a way as though you're in her mind and she's just stream of consciousness, like she's talking to a friend or something.
Yeah.
And if you were to meet somebody and start to build a relationship with them, you would not tell them the most deepest, most traumatic thing that's happened to you right off the bat.
Hmm.
You would not, you wouldn't tell them that your mom has been suffering from addiction and that she left and died and had an overdose and all of these really traumatic, tragic things,
Yeah.
especially while you're still processing it yourself. And so
Hmm.
we just get these bits and pieces, which of course that just comes up in conversation sometimes. And so you're going to get little hints of that, but then all of it just comes gushing out all of a sudden. And that's what happens in real life when you form a relationship with someone, is just all of a sudden it'll just all come spilling out.
Yeah.
In that moment, I like truly felt like I was very close to this character, and this relationship had been fully formed, and I
Yeah.
finally understood.
Yeah. It's almost like we had to build that trust with Lydia first in order for her to completely tell her story. And she needed to tell it in her own way without being like hindered or hampered by like our part in the relationship as the reader. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the same, going back to the shark thing, it says she finds Michael's face and doesn't know if she's a decoy or a shark.
Mm-hmm.
And it says he is physically moved by sharks. Like, well, it doesn't say that, it's describing how physically moved he is by sharks.
Right, right, right.
And like his legs are shaking and his voice is hoarse. And I would have almost thought, like, wouldn't she be more confused as to if he's a decoy or, the plastic. If he's
Right,
the plastic or a shark, is he going to hurt her? But no, she's scared if she's going to hurt him, or if she's one of the sharks with him,
right.
you know?
Yeah,
That
it's
was
really interesting.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, Michael and Lydia's relationship is, for me, next to like Lydia's own relationship with herself, probably the most interesting one in the book, only because of like the history there. And then we find out that Michael is an alcoholic as well, which is what her mom suffered from, as well as like other types of addiction, but alcohol was definitely there. And Lydia Lydia's other mom, Erin, is so concerned with Lydia not drinking because it runs in the family, obviously. And she doesn't want Lydia to like have to deal with the repercussions of drinking, especially if like it goes too far. That to me in this book, when Lydia started drinking on the island a decent amount, I was like, I think she's just like trying to like A, understand her mom, and B, trying to feel what her mom was really feeling. And
Mm.
like in that closeness, trying to like understand her own grief. But it was so interesting because it was like also showing the like how much it is a problem and how much it runs in people's families because, there wasn't any alcohol left on the island except for like frozen cubes of alcohol in the back of some sort. And she's like sucking on them. And it was just so interesting to me how she wasn't using alcohol for like the high that you get or like the buzz. It was almost to like just get a deeper understanding of her mom. And I thought that was like incredibly interesting, especially when she's watching Michael make incredibly dumb decisions while intoxicated. And then her herself makes a very bad decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the first night she got drunk there, which was weeks in. It wasn't like they were drinking right off the bat or anything. I feel like the hardship of the weather and what's going on there like drove a lot of them to be like, no, we need to like drink at the end of the day, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like, do we just talk about Michael right now? We might as well.
Yeah. I have more animal things that have to do with addiction and Michael.
Perfect. Great segue. So yeah, with Michael, that's a great segue.
Um, the orcas. When the orcas attack the shark, I saw a metaphor here of when addiction gets a person, the other
Mm.
sharks get spooked and leave.
That's what I was going for. Yes, that was like the metaphor with the leaving. I couldn't like fully suss out in my brain. I'm glad you said this.
Yeah, and then later Lydia goes through Michael's journals in his bedroom,
Mm-hmm.
and he writes about the orcas, new and unfamiliar, a threat to the sharks and this population. And then that made me think, like, oh my gosh, is this how he sees Lydia? Um, because she is, new and unfamiliar, and he is clearly seeing her as a threat. I mean, something like really shifted after they shared that kiss, but it just really continues to shift as she's trying to give him attention and he is becoming very cold towards her.
Mm-hmm.
And on that night when Lydia gets really drunk, that's where stuff really starts to go down. And we don't see for a long time just how broken down Lydia's headspace really is
Yeah.
here. I guess building up to this, we should talk about how Lydia thinks about Michael.
Yeah.
So right off the bat in the beginning, she talks about how he is a better version of Julian. Julian's her ex-boyfriend and his son.
Mm-hmm.
And she talks very physically, or thinks, I guess, thinks very physically about him. And it starts off tame and it just gets progressively more aggressive, I
Yeah,
guess.
like it's more like erotic the more she like
Yeah.
talks about him. Yeah. Or
Yeah.
like thinks about him.
Yes.
And he like doesn't look like Julian. He's always been like different, doesn't necessarily like very much understand Julian, his own son. So I think that's like intriguing for Lydia.
Yeah. And he's just like a man, you know, he's an
Mm-hmm.
older man, and she's very attracted to that. In the beginning, she's talking about, there's this quote that I wrote down. It says, his irises are dark, the eyelashes long, the bottom of a well, the end of a tunnel, the ground. And this is about Michael.
I wrote one down too. The sun sank through the windows and into his arms. The body hairs bleached blonde from all the time in the field. And yeah, the way she describes him, it's very like intimate, but it's also
Yeah.
like a little okay. I'm only saying this because I really needed to know Julia's big three because it's a little delusional. Like it's very poetic, don't get me wrong, but also like you don't know this man. And I felt like the whole time she was with Michael, it was like she was putting so much of her own beauty and poetic mind and soul onto this man and making him into something that she is or wants to
Mhm.
be versus who he actually is. And I thought that
Yeah.
was really interesting because I think I have a tendency to do that too. I also saw myself in this book, Haylie. Um, but like it just I got the feeling that she was building Michael up this whole time. And I was like, but we don't have any proof that this is how he actually is.
Mhm.
So I thought that was really interesting. And I think like as she learns more about his past and his addiction and things, she's like really taken aback. Like she even says in the book, like, oh, I didn't know this about him. And it's like, well, yeah, because you're 18 and he's a
Yeah.
grown man and you've known him for how long, you know?
Yeah.
So I just thought that was really interesting. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. Well, she had just been talking about her experience of claustrophobia,
Hmm.
and like she was stuck in a tunnel, and she had just had this experience again in the water, to her, he was the end in sight of this
Hmm.
claustrophobia.
Right.
Um, you know, the end of a tunnel. Literally, she's just got done talking about the claustrophobia in a tunnel, the end of a tunnel, the bottom of a well. She's in the water. She's having claustrophobia again in the water. He's grounding to her. He's the ground. Like
Hmm.
she exactly is projecting so much onto him.
Yeah.
Like that's such an insane amount of like putting all of her safety
Yes,
into him
that's what I was gonna say.
right off of the bat.
Yeah. And now I was literally gonna touch on the safety part. I think she's completely lifted, ungrounded right now at this point in her life. And she's like clawing and searching for grounding and safety. And I think if she didn't do this, like if she didn't project all of this onto someone, like it would have been catastrophic. It would have been disastrous. Like she, even though it wasn't real, it was necessary for her to like survive. And I think
Mm,
during the grieving process, sometimes we have to project or pretend, I don't even know what to call it, and like make things up in our head, make stories up in our head, all these things just to survive the massiveness that is grief, right? And so for her, that was Michael on this trip. He was the big, safe guy who was going to protect her. Captain, too, she projects a lot onto Captain and she projects a lot onto Zeke and makes them into these people that she needed them to be, even if they weren't that. And I wonder if like that was how she was like coming to terms with who she thought her mom was and who her mom wasn't. And then
yeah.
in seeing that she was and figuring out that, oh, I did project all these things onto someone, it was easier to like look back and be like, oh, but like that's okay. And
Yeah.
this is where like fact meets fiction, you know?
Yeah. Well, and Lydia's done this in the past too with
Mm-hmm.
Frank. Her what was he to her, a neighbor or a friend or her parents' friend?
I don't know who. Oh, is this the one who was like dad energy?
Yeah, she was her mom said, her mom Erin said that she like really flirted a lot with this guy when she was a little
Yes.
kid.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I think it was a friend of a dad, a friend of a dad of a friend, I believe.
Mm,
Yeah, it's interesting her like relationship with men. I mean, we don't know it totally, but this is like the only way we get into it, insight into it, I guess. Um, but it seems like yeah, similar thing with Frank that is with Michael, in that just like this immediate trust, not dependence, but just like you'll make sure that I'm okay,
mm, yeah.
even if they don't have the capacity to do so, or if it's not appropriate for them to do so.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting now that I'm thinking about it with that attack with the orcas, saying that the orcas go for the liver.
I was just thinking that too. That's what addiction gets.
Yeah, alcoholism gets the liver.
Yeah.
And that was such a great parallel to me. I think I picked up on it a little bit as I was reading. I read this part yesterday, but then when you were talking about how it all works together, I was like, oh, wow, what an interesting parallel to draw. And how it
Mm,
was like the thing that it didn't even want the body, just the orcas didn't even want the shark body, just the liver.
yeah.
That's all it came for, and knew
Yeah.
exactly how to get it. And how like that's very much what alcohol does. Obviously, it doesn't have a mind like an orca, but to some extent, it's a smart drug, you know?
Yeah. It's such an interesting, you know, opposition too, because alcoholism and addiction can be such a slow,
Mhm.
painful for everybody involved death.
Yeah. Hmm.
And this was an incredibly violent, fast death.
Hmm.
Um, and there's no mistaking what's going on with
No.
the orcas. There's no telling stories about it. There's no pretending that it's anything that it's not. It's just a brutal, bloody, violent scene. And it's the exact same thing that is happening with, these people that are suffering from addiction, but it's much more difficult to recognize in many, many cases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very sad. A lot of this book was sad, if I'm
Yeah.
being honest. Okay, so let's talk about Lydia and her mistake with, well, she doesn't call it a mistake, but Michael calls it a mistake. Anyway, we'll get there. So on the boat, when the orcas attack this, we already talked about they kiss. They go back and Lydia gets like blackout drunk, like incredibly drunk. Zeke's drinking. Michael's not there, but I think he's at the lighthouse and watching a Warriors game. And I love the little bits of basketball that were put in here. That was really fun for me. Hold on, I want to find a quote. So she says, she's talking about Zeke and how I think they're similar aged. He looks at me a little bit like the guys that pick up basketball do. His polite smiles, gestures at respect, but really equals tolerance. He's disappointed to be stuck guarding me. He's nice enough not to say it, but not nice enough not to think it.
Mm,
And yeah, so just a little basketball reference and how women, I feel like, women are treated similarly. Oh my God, similarly in most spaces that are dominated by men. And I think at the beginning, you know, Lydia was really feeling that, especially coming from Zeke, who's like her peer. And I know as the weeks get rolling, she gets much more accepted by the men, especially when she's like dealing with her own gendered stuff. She's using this as an opportunity to like not act out, but like allow herself to be that more masculine presence that I think she wants to be moving forward. It's almost like a test. And so she does get more accepted, but So Zeke's drinking after this attack. Lydia is drinking after this attack. Michael is up watching a Warriors game at the lighthouse. It's the only place they have like decent Wi-Fi. And he comes back, and the way that Lydia and Zeke stumbled up the stairs, they recognize as the same way Michael's stumbling up the stairs. So they know that he's drunk as well. And Lydia thinks she's following Michael into his room because she's, like you said earlier, was really trying to get his more of his attention. And he's like kind of not having it. But she follows him into this room and like has sex with him. And the whole time I'm going, no, stop. First of all, you're drunk. He's drunk. This is not going to end up well. Like, this is just like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Well, and I was like, why, Michael? Are you just so calmly, casually inviting her into your bed as though you expected this? Because
Right.
that's not the vibe that you've been giving.
Right.
So, what the heck?
Yeah, it was very strange because Lydia describes it as he sat up in the bed and then like laid back down as if he was safe. You know, the thing with the cat, she was saying how cats, when they're safe, they like blink their eyes slowly, and that like he did that. And then he like reached his arms out to like basically like draw her into bed. And I was like, but also, again, this is your son's ex-girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
That's weird. This should
Mm-hmm.
not be happening.
Yeah.
And then for the next, like, big chunk of the book, Michael's not acknowledging her. She's like so confused. She wants to be treated normal, but she's also like, but also there has been something that has happened.
You know what this reminded me of?
What?
Um, Jenna Ortega in Miller's Girl.
Oh, you got me. I haven't seen it.
Woo! It's the new one that Jenna Ortega's in where she's like a high school student dating a teacher.
Ew, okay. Oh,
Um,
yes, I remember the discourse about this film.
yeah, so she has this line where, okay, basically they've had this whole relationship situation, and then the school finds out about it because of this crazy essay that she writes and turns in that is pretty much porn.
Oh, damn.
And of the two of them, and she's made
Yeah.
it up. It didn't actually happen in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Which like, whoa, crazy parallels here.
Spoiler.
But yeah, but then he just is like not talking to her, and she goes up to him and is like, "What's wrong? What's going on? Why won't you talk to me?" Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Get away from me! Don't talk to me anymore!" Blah blah blah. And then she, because there had been some, relationship building up to this, which just like these two, there had been.
Yeah.
She says, "You can't blur the lines and then expect me to see a boundary once I've crossed it."
Oh, that is a great mantra for life. No blurred boundary lines, please, people. But
Yeah,
yes,
it
yeah,
was such a parallel.
that is very similar. So the book goes on, and we find out some things about Michael, and Lydia finds some things about Michael is he's doing this thing called chumming, which I think is it illegal or just like frowned upon? It seems like it's
It's
very
illegal.
illegal.
It's illegal in a lot of places. Like if you are just casually fishing, most
Yeah.
places you can't do that.
Do you know
So,
why?
it's just considered unethical
Why?
because I think that the reasoning for it is that it gives the fish like a lot more reason to come in. Like the bait
Okay.
is just a
It's just
lot
like
better.
it's like upsetting the balance of the ecosystem, basically.
I think it just draws the fish in a lot better than like regular bait.
Okay,
And
we'll
so,
ask Julia why this is illegal.
yeah, I don't
Uh,
like really fully know the answer to that, but I do know growing up fishing that that was a big no-no.
okay. So Michael is doing this, which is like bad because he wants the sharks to come back. And so we find that about Michael. And I think she has like some questions about that, like, why would he be doing this type of thing? She tells Zeke about it, and Zeke's been acting really different since that night of drinking, which they're both like, or they're all horribly hungover after the night of drinking, the questionable sex that happened. Like everyone is just like, what the fuck happened? Ah, someone just knocked my door. Hold on one second.
Scary. Oh, guys, I hate when people knock on my door. I'm so scared for her. Let's listen. Okay. I think we're fine. I think it was just a friendly person. I think it was just a neighbor.
It was my neighbor.
Oh, I was so right. I talked to them while you were gone.
You were like, Lauren's gone. It was my neighbor who needs constant computer help, which is totally fine. She's a sweet lady. But I was like, I can't. She thought I was crying. I was like, no, I wasn't crying. For once, I wasn't crying when you came over. No. I don't cry that often. I'm fine.
That's not true.
Okay, I am a crier. What do you want from me? Okay, we're back. So crazy plot twist that we find out is that Lydia did not have sex with Michael. Lydia had sex with Zeke. And I felt so bad for Lydia. I really felt bad for her because, again, she built this whole thing up in her head about Michael and about Zeke and how they were like brothers, and like Zeke and Lydia were brothers and like familial, and she didn't want any of that with him at all. And then to find out like, oh fuck, like I fucked this guy and not the guy I wanted to fuck. And to say it, she said it to Michael's face. She's like, yeah, but we slept together. And he was like humiliated and taken aback and very confused. It was like a whole drama. It was really crazy.
Yeah. Can we like what even what is the mental state? Let's dissect.
Yeah,
what
let's
is
do
the
it.
mental state that you have to be in to convince your there's two hummingbirds dancing together outside of my window.
We are insane. They're not dancing, Haylie.
Yes, they are.
No.
What do you call it when they're
mating?
Fluttering. Oh my god,
You're watching hummingbirds have sex right now.
No. That's not as wholesome as I thought.
I know. When you said it, I was like, well, two of them are never together unless that's what's happening. So.
Oh, no, not on the power line.
Careful up there.
That baby's gonna be electric.
Haylie, let's dissect this.
Yeah, I just don't even know where to start because...
Well, okay, I'll start.
Yeah, you go for it because I'm just totally at loss.
She's blackout drunk. There's not electricity. It's not like she can see.
I thought there was electricity.
I mean, okay, maybe I made that up in my head. I was thinking this
because they aren't like walking around with candles, you know?
Okay, well, a lot of these scenes, the way she described them, really reminded me of Portrait of a Lady on Fire, like on the rocks with the water. Like one of these scenes, I even wrote it down in my notes in this book that was like, this is very Portrait of a Lady on Fire, when like Sophie comes into the kitchen and like makes the food and like lights the candles, and like it's just like very like old timey, like pre-electricity. So in my head, I made it that there was no electricity.
In their ocean crossing, they went through a time portal.
It's an island. It might not have electricity. There's only good Wi-Fi. They have to use a satellite phone. Like, to me, that screams like not a ton of electricity. I don't know. But okay, going back to the mental state, it has to be dark. If you're like that drunk, you don't have the lights on. And that can be very easy, I feel like, to like, I'm sure it's a small hallway with the rooms, like missed a spot. Like, and also when she was drinking, she was talking about how her other mom would be like so disappointed in her. And like, so she's going to be sad missing her mom, sad that she's disappointing her other mom. She's been wanting to fuck Michael. She got into the wrong room. He had, if it was Michael, the reaction that she built up in her head that he would have. So it was just confirmation bias that this is him. So I
Yeah.
get it.
But like, how would she not, hear their voices or feel their bodies and be like, oh, this is a grown, hairy man versus little Zeke, who is like a little nerd guy.
Drunk. That's the alcohol is crazy. I think this was like also written to show like how devastating alcohol can be.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I'm not saying I've ever had this experience. I've never been that drunk where I like had sex with someone that I thought was someone else. But I've been drunk and been like, what happened? Or like, did I say that? Like, I'll look at a text message I'll send while drunk and then be like, I don't remember. How did I get there? And it'll like come back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also, she's 18. She's a baby,
Oh, yeah.
right? Like, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still confused by the logistics of this, but like emotionally, I understand. I especially understand like the guilt and the how she would feel like she's disappointing her mom. I've never once drank and not felt guilty like I'm disappointing my mom.
Oh,
Like,
Haley.
I, but I mean, I mean, I feel just absolutely gut wrenched terrible for her
Mhm.
and everybody involved. And Zeke,
I
oh,
was gonna say I
little
feel
Zeke.
bad for Zeke too.
Yeah,
Because
because
for a
he
while,
has no idea.
and for a while, he's operating that like him and Lydia are on the same page about having sex. And meanwhile, she doesn't, she completely thinks it was Michael. So she's treating Zeke the same and being like, why are you being so weird, bro?
Yeah,
And he's like, I'm so like that poor kid was probably so confused.
yeah, yeah. And we saw his little sweet side with the origin story of him and his sister and the salamander.
I
And we just like really got
know.
to see into Zeke, and I just started to feel so bad for him. But
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be okay. I mean, I feel bad for him, but like also it's fine. Move on. um, yeah, so that happens, and this just once Michael finds out that Lydia thinks this, like their whole dynamic shifts. Do they ever have a conversation where she fixes it and is like, I'm so sorry?
no,
That right. She doesn't be like, oh, ow, yeah, I realized that it wasn't you and me, it was me and Zeke. Like, I don't think she wants to admit that to him either.
no, no. And Lydia also, like, she will just meld herself into whatever she thinks that a man wants her to be. And she does that with like pretty much every man. When she thinks that Michael wants her to just disappear from
Yeah,
his, sphere of existence, she's going to just do
do
that.
that. Well, I want to talk about what Lydia said about sex in this book because I found it to be so beautiful. And I'm gonna like literally text Julia and be like, what is your sun, moon, and rising? You know what? I'm gonna do it right now. Because I'm gonna be like, we're in the middle of recording a podcast and I need to know because the way she talks about this and this quote that I have, like I am like, are you me? So hold on. Let me, but okay, I'll just read it and then I'll tell you guys if she gets back to me. She says, I never understood when people described their toes curling in sex. And now I do, as if someone's touch connects you so deeply to yourself that everything drops down to exist on the same line. I love that might be one of my favorite lines like ever written in a book because I feel like people think all the time about how sex is so special and the connection between you and another person. And while I get that and I like understand that and I feel the same way, I don't think people necessarily realize how much sex connects you to yourself. Even though you're with another person, the feelings that you I feel like feel whether it's emotionally, spiritually, physically, they are, in my experience, so deep that they connect you with different parts of yourself that you couldn't otherwise access.
This is why people cry after sex.
Yes, it's so true.
I'm a chronic crier.
Are you a crier after
I'm a
sex, Haylie?
crier. I am.
Oh, I no comment.
I just really threw myself under the bus there.
Okay,
But
no, I can't. Never mind. I'm not a crier. I'll say that. I'm not a crier. I'm a cuddler. I like to cuddle after sex, but I feel like everyone does.
yeah, pretty. I cry all the time though. I last night, my girlfriend doesn't know this. Last night I was just looking at her as she was falling asleep and I just started crying. And this happens
Aw.
all the time. All the time. I'm so emotional.
I am too. I am too. I get it. I feel you. I've done that. I have definitely done that. Laying next to my ex, I used to cry like all the time. She fell
Yeah.
asleep really fast, and I would just like lay there and like I would like stroke her face, which is like what would put her to sleep. And then she would like fall asleep, and I would just be sitting there. My like eyes would like well up, being like, "This is the safest place ever." You know what I mean? So I'm definitely a crier. I'm just not like a crier after sex.
Yeah, I'm just like, I just love you so much. And then I
Oh.
just start crying.
Did she
My
wake up?
eyes are welling right now. No, she didn't wake up.
Oh,
She was asleep. But I
no.
also,
No, that's okay. Well, we lost our train of thought crying about people we love. Um, which I think is like so special. Like this book, the love that like seeps and pours out of her words are just like it's all there right in front of you. I don't know. The way she talked again, the way she talked about her mom and the way she just like wrote, it's not romanticizing, you know, like, and it's not delusional. I take back my word from earlier. Okay, actually, no, I don't. But I also will not attach a negative connotation to the word delusional. I'm just going to use it as like a factual word that I actually think is really beautiful. So, to all my fellow Pisces out there, I see you. But so this happens.
that was so aggressive. I felt like I was sitting on the other side of the screen, like, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay.
I really gave a dissertation on connotations of words. I don't like how we attach things that are like negative connotations to things that are generally perceived as like female or womanly. Like you can be delusional without things being harmful, and maybe it's actually really beautiful. Okay. Okay, this was interesting, this part of the book when talking about Michael, and we're all over the place, so I'm sorry, and I hope everyone's following along. But after she
Buckle
really,
up.
yeah, buckle up, guys. This is how we always are. But that's what's fun. So after they had had sex, she was like, again, trying to like get his attention. And she was saying, so she thinks that the captain might, again, she's going down these like rabbit holes of like, who knows that me and Michael slept together? And does he do this with all the girls that come? And like, she's just going down all these different rabbit holes in her head. And she thinks the captain might know. And she says that the captain's watching her closely. And I don't like that he might see weakness in me, or worse, he sees a slutty girl, or even worse than that, a victim of something. And to me, I thought that was interesting because if it was Michael that she had sex with, there is a very big age gap and power dynamic here at play. And it's interesting that this is like she's worried about how the captain's going to see her because, again, the captain is somebody who she is like counting on to protect her. And I don't know, it's just, I think it's really hard to exist and move through the world aware of constantly being perceived and then caring so much about being how you're perceived. I think it can be like stifling. Again, she's like an 18-year-old little girl worrying about how these grown men are going to see her when she's just trying to live a truly authentic experience to herself while like navigating grief and navigating rough waters, should we say. Like the waters are so rough inside of her and outside of her, and she's still concerned about how she's being perceived. I don't know. It's just, to me, it just felt so heavy. Everything was so heavy. Like she was dealing with so much this entire book. And I lost my train of thought of where I was going with this. I don't know. I don't know where I am.
Yeah. Well, you're right. It does feel really heavy, and the way that is Captain is perceiving her.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I really liked in this part that you're talking about right after she thinks that her and Michael slept together.
Yeah.
She says about the captain that he had summoned up all his goodwill and coughed it out onto me, then stood there waiting for me to metabolize the love.
Mm.
And that I loved that. That really reminded me of my own family and the tough love, especially like my grandparents in Montana and my aunts and uncles and my mom especially is they're all very tough love kind of people, but it's in a very genuine way that reminded me a lot of Captain of like
Mm.
sometimes they don't really know how to be soft, like the softest people, or like approach things in a way that you see all these videos and whatever now of like gentle parenting or whatever, and it's
Yeah.
like, well, that's not the style that they're ever gonna come to you with.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine Captain gentle parenting? Absolutely not. But
No.
but he does absolutely love Lydia in like
Hmm.
this fathering way.
Yeah.
And sometimes, yeah, it's like he's gathering he exactly like what this quote is saying. He's gathering his goodwill and just dumping. And
Yeah.
it's not in this well organized or beautiful or soft way. It's a literal just dump of goodwill and love, and then you
Yeah.
as the receiver, whoa,
Sorry, go
you
ahead.
as the receiver have to find a way to accept it and then metabolize it, which I really what
Julia just got back to me. Guys, guess what her moon sign is?
I don't know.
Pisces moon, same as me. Oh my God, that's so amazing. Okay, I'm so sorry. Continue. I had to get, oh my gosh.
What's the sun?
Taurus, like Miss Haley over here, and Capricorn
Oh,
rising, which is my sun sign. She
wow.
got a lot of earth, but then that water fucking moon is really going to make you real delusional and fucked up. I'm telling you.
Moon's the
Okay.
one that we don't know about mine,
No, we know your
right?
moon.
Oh, we don't know
We
my
know your,
rising.
we don't know your rising. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, and okay. So sorry. Going back to Captain, he also dumps it in a really non-judgmental way, which is that kind of, even though it's like tough love, is that kind of how what you experienced with your family as well?
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes it's judgmental.
No, not no gentle at all in there. But the love you felt was real, I'm sure.
Yes. I think that Michael is also the mice.
Ooh, I love you and your metaphorical animals. Can you tell us why you think that? Well, tell us about the mice a little bit and then
So the mice are taking over the island.
yes.
Um, it's a complete takeover and it's catastrophic because they're attracting owls, which are destroying the ecosystem because they have no natural predators. Um, the mice are, it's like the ground is moving. There's so many of them, and they just shouldn't be there. It's a whole thing. And
Mm.
what the government people want to do about it is they want to come in and drop poison pellets everywhere to kill the mice. But that would kill all the other animals too. So it's like, maybe don't do that. But they don't listen. They do it anyway. I thought that he was the small whiskered mouse that ran on Lydia's foot because Michael is an alcoholic and a loose cannon, which is news to Lydia. And that's and then now we know why why Captain distrusts him. But that little mouse that ran over her foot, that was like that was a little surprise. And that happened at the exact same time that she gets this news about Michael. So
Yeah.
just like that timing, it's always with the timing. We get these
Yeah.
pieces like right as these things happen, and then later the mice are doing damage to the island and attracting owls that have no natural predators. And Michael is also doing damage to the island by putting the bait in the water and chumming.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also doing damage to the island when he kisses Lydia and he says he made a mistake.
Yeah.
And when he starts to drink, even though he knows that he shouldn't be doing that. And anyway, lots of
That's a
little metaphors.
Yeah, that's a great metaphor. I want to talk about Lydia's mom's stories a little bit
Mhm.
as like we kind of wrap it up. But first I found some things that support something I said. Um but so there's two things, and I was talking about how like grief and things that like you make up in your mind to keep you alive. And she says, what good is memory if it can't hold an experience tightly? If it can't recall exactly how small I felt that day? If it can't keep me alive? And I definitely cried at that line. Again, some of these, I knew she was a Pisces moon. I just knew it. I can spot them from a mile away. But I wrote down that memory as the thing that keeps you alive. And as humans, we actually don't have good memory. Like, eyewitnesses to crimes are wrong like 80% of the time. Like, it's really crazy. Our memory is what we make it. And like emotions and the things that we feel and experience inside our bodies are the closest thing we have to memory. Right. And then she also writes about the next page. She's talking about Michael, and she's talking about how he's kind of unpredictable to her now, and says, a manic, unbelievable version of him, one I don't trust. Did I ever trust him? Yes. I trusted the best version, the one halfway stored in my head. And she's like, did I trust him? Yes. But that trust, even though I fully, wholeheartedly felt it for him, like, one, it wasn't deserved. And I only trusted him because I, again, projected all these things onto him.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I just wanted to like talk about it because I just felt so strongly, like, kind of understood. Cause this is what I do with people sometimes is like, I'm just like, no, I can see you and I can see you so well. And you're not living up to how I'm seeing you. And then I have to reckon with, okay, wait, hold on. Maybe we should back up here. Maybe you just made it up in your head a little bit, you
Mhm.
know? And that's such a tough spot to be in, especially when you feel like you see the good in people. And I feel like that's how she is with Michael and Captain and Zeke, like the whole time, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. See, I'm just going to keep going with this because her writing just flows, and everything I underline is like one thread. But she says she's talking about her mom's with Christmas, and how Aaron wanted to put up the tree. And she says, I'm so empty, it's absurd. What does Christmas mean anymore? And then I underlined, I have all my memories and no more expectations. And I just wrote, same. Because I feel like with this Pisces moon of mine, I build up my memories so big, and then I'm expecting everything to be the same, and I'm expecting to have those same feelings. But when something so drastically shifts and changes, like death or grief or a relationship ending, like anything like that, and then a holiday comes, it's like you have to come to terms with like these expectations are not going to be met anymore
No.
because something so fundamentally has changed. And I think Lydia is like discovering all of this in like such a rushed manner, right? Not saying it's good or bad either way, but she's just like experiencing all of this so fast and quickly. And I just feel like it's so much for her little heart.
Yeah, especially at such a an age like 18, when things are changing so rapidly anyway in somebody's life, like you're making a
Yeah.
transition from high school into whatever you choose to do next. In her case, it was going to be college, but now she's taking this time and making a different big change to this research project, and you're meeting all sorts of new people, and you're transitioning from a child into a grown up, and now her mom is gone. And your parents, depending on your situation, but a lot of the time are one of the most important figures in your life. And, now to have that person gone, that's such a big change, and that's really devastating, and a lot of grief, and that's so hard. And you're right, it is rushed. And she talks about too of how quickly her other mom, Erin, got rid of Blake's things in her
Mhm.
bedroom, except for the shrine bathroom. I don't know. It's just, I really felt for her going through all of that. It's hard
Yeah.
enough without a death like that. And, oh,
Yeah. Oh, so the end of the book comes, and the end of the book talks about how Captain and Lydia are on the boat, and they hear a noise they haven't heard before. And she's like, is that an animal? Is it a bird? Is it a sea lion? But then she clocks it and realizes it's Zeke. And he has like this massive ankle injury, and everyone has to like snap into gear, and like she has to run and get the med kit, and they have to figure out what they're going to do. And it's just like the most chaos that has happened. And it's almost like, I don't know if this is like the metaphor of like the island rejecting the humans being there, but like it almost felt like, with the orca attack and them saying like sometimes the sharks don't return until next year or even if at all, and then this like disastrous ankle injury, I felt like the islands were like rejecting the human presence there. And maybe I'm just reading into it too much, but the end was interesting to me for sure.
it was so disturbing, that scene. And everything that came after it so quickly was very disturbing. But I also wonder if you noticed the line there. So in the chapters, there's a line at the beginning of each chapter.
Yes, the
It's like a wavy
waves.
line, yeah. And right after this ankle injury happened, that one was different. And I
Oh,
thought that maybe it was
really?
signaling, like, yeah, that she's on land, or versus water.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there's like it's straight.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. And then if you read at the end of the chat, did you read all the people she thanked at the end of the chapter or at
No.
the end of the book? Well,
No.
she thanks whoever her like graphic designer is about those chapter titles. So that makes a lot more sense. I bet you they'll be so happy to hear that you picked up on that. Okay, so how after this ankle injury, like what happens? How do we like wrap it up? And how do we end this?
Lydia's thinking about Blake again. And I wrote down a couple of quotes that I'll just read, and then
Yeah,
I'll tell you, like, I guess I'll tell them this big event that finishes us off here.
let's do it.
Um so about Blake, she says it was no longer fun, and a seed of something else was planted in me. That what is fun can also hurt, and that I could fly out into the wind and get swallowed up. It was easy to believe her, but the dread never left my stomach.
Mm.
And that was about Blake falling back into addiction. And that just felt like, I mean, that feels so very true about addiction. And if you've ever loved somebody who suffers from addiction, you'll know how true that feels, and how something that starts out as fun can very, very quickly turn into something scary.
Yeah.
Um, but this also felt like the island, and like what just happened with Zeke. This
Mm-hmm.
something fun very quickly turned into something scary.
Yeah.
And anyway, then she moves on to say, it was a risky fun, a balancing game that we knew wouldn't end well. But you had two choices. One, anticipate the pieces falling and breaking on the ground and feel the break as if already broken. Wait. Or two, pretend the break was not coming and dance. Ignore. Two was more fun, even if it meant the break hurt more.
Mm. Do you want to know what that? Because I remember that line very vividly because it brought me a memory. And this is gonna sound crazy, and I promise I'm not crazy. You probably have not seen the movie 28 Days with Sandra Bullock?
Mm-mm.
So Sandra Bullock is a younger sister. She has an older sister. Sandra Bullock is an alcoholic. She does pills. She has to go to rehab. And in this movie, there's all these flashbacks of the two little girls as little girls, and their mom is like clearly drunk or high or on something, but she's playing with them. And the younger sister has all these just beautiful memories of her mom, while the older sister can see what's going on. And it's almost that dichotomy of like, go with it and go with the flow versus like knowing what's going to happen. And that made me think of that and like what a dichotomy to live within one person to have to feel that.
Yeah.
I'm like gonna cry.
Yeah. I mean, you want to hold on to the last pieces of the person that you love and the fun that you have together. And then a disease like addiction can just turn them into something that you do not even recognize. And that
Mhm.
can happen at the flip of a switch. And
Yeah.
you know that it's coming. But sometimes, when you get that glimpse of the old version of them, it's really hard to not indulge in that.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
then, yeah, so we then go to Lydia is outside by herself. She became overwhelmed uh, in the cabin or whatever you want to call it,
hmm.
and leaves. And she goes out. She's sitting there and she watches seal number 78 become a mom,
Oh my
which
God, I know.
she said her chest feels bruised watching this, which just makes sense. She has such a complicated relationship with moms.
Hmm. That's literally where I have my book open to, because I have like underlined things.
Yeah. Then Lydia decides to go swimming and drowns. Um, she just keeps getting pulled underwater and she doesn't really care to come back up.
Yeah.
There's not really a moment where she has the realization that she is drowning, but there's not really a moment where she feels like the fire of, oh my gosh, let's get back up
Yeah.
and get air. She just kind of lets it happen. And she sees her mom Blake, who has passed away. She sees Blake's face, and um, after she's been underwater for about 5 minutes, uh, Captain comes and pulls her out of the water and brings her back, and then she gets brought back to the mainland and back home to Aaron, and that's where we end.
Yep. Not to be like so annoying in pop culture, but that scene that she wrote reminded me a lot of the scene in Grey's Anatomy when Meredith pretty much does the same thing. Meredith is the main character, and she goes to like a mass trauma event. It was a ferry boat that crashed, and she gets like kicked into the water, and she's been going through a really hard time, and it's so cold that like she just stops fighting and she's pulled down just like this. And Derek, who's like her soon to be husband, like gets her out. But again, she was under for so long, they, had to do all these life saving things on her. But what I really liked about the way she wrote this, and also the way it's done in Grey's Anatomy at the same scene, is it's so peaceful feeling for the person that's like stopped fighting, or it felt peaceful. Which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing in terms of like what we're talking about, but she says the weight of water holds my middle together, the heavy place where the biggest feelings reside. And this whole time she talks about like this emptiness in the pit of her stomach. And, I underlined the part about her middle being held together, and where the biggest feelings reside is like, that's where I feel mine too, is like right in my gut. Like if I'm feeling something really, really big, I'm going to be nauseous. I'm gonna feel like there's something heavy in my stomach that like I can't get out. I haven't, and then I'll also feel, depending on, the emotion, like so empty. Like I'm so empty inside. And for her to like be in the water, and if Lydia is Julia and Julia has a Pisces moon, when you're in water, it feels so healing and like right. And but then also it's like that same thing that she was talking about, where something fun can be also be so scary. And I truly don't think there's anything scarier than water, or like big bodies of water, because of how quickly you can just be overtaken. And I think she was just like feeling so much that she was just ready to be overtaken. I'm not saying she like wanted to die, but sometimes I think it feels better to go that route than to actually deal with what you're feeling.
I think that she felt very tired
Mm-hmm.
and overwhelmed and kind of had the mindset of like, well, I'm here. And I don't know, uh I felt so sad in this
Hmm.
scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when Michael came and got her too, it wasn't like she wasn't upset that, or it wasn't Michael, Captain. When Captain came and got her, she wasn't upset that Captain came and got her. She was just like, "Oh, there's Captain." You know?
It's kind of like letting her life just happen to her.
Yeah.
Like and kind of succumbing to like, these things are going to happen to me and I can't control it. The only thing I can control is like, it's not even control. The only thing I can do about these situations is feel how I'm feeling
Mm.
and accept that and like be okay with that. And I think that's a really hard lesson to learn. It's something I'm learning, is like, you can have all these feelings about something. It's not going to change anything. And you just have to be okay with the fact that this is your reaction to it. And you can't let it consume you, or else you might just drown. Okay, last thing I want to say is, this is the most Pisces moon excerpt to ever be written. And I think it's so beautiful. And I think it encapsulates, when I try to explain why I find someone to be a Pisces moon, what it means. Sometimes I can look at people and see they were also kids once, and that they'll die someday. I can see they're hurt and I want to make them feel better. Even though they hurt me, I'd like to keep them around. To me, like, Pisces is at the end of the zodiac. They're really close to like death and the next world and spirituality and like understanding. And being at the end of the zodiac, they get to watch all the other signs go through life basically. And they can really draw and take from that. And so to like have the amount of empathy to understand that even though people hurt me, I still see them as like human, and I still want them around. And it's tragic and beautiful at the same time. And that's what I felt about this like whole book, was like, it was tragic yet beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And it hurt my feelings a lot. But it was, I'm gonna have to reread it again. I definitely think it's a book I'm gonna come back to and want to reread at like different points in my life. So, ugh, yeah. What are your final thoughts here?
I still, when I think of this book as a whole, I just really think about the way that Lydia experiences the world through her body and her senses. And even though at the very beginning she says, like, that's not how I am able to walk through this world, I think she very much takes in the world. Even though she then turns all of her sensory experiences into a whirlwind of thoughts about them.
Yeah.
She is very much sensing as she moves through the world. And
Hmm.
a way that I really related to her was the way that she creates metaphors through everything. And or maybe I projected that onto her. I don't know. With the with the animals, but I do it all the time where I see animals and I'm like, oh, they're just like this because of this.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like she was doing that. And it really, I don't know, that gave this book a lot of meaning to me. But
I love
yeah, that's
that.
my closing thoughts.
I love it. We can't wait to talk to Julia and ask them all about this book and the relationships and how she sees the world. That's what I want to get from our author interview is how do you see the world? Because I feel like you gave us a really good glimpse with this book, but I would like love to hear more about that.
Hmm.
So, um, okay, guys, I believe we are going to have an episode in between this episode that you're hearing right now and our author interview. I believe we will be doing season 1, episode 1 of the L Word. Haley's got her amazing eyebrows going. Um, and we're really excited to get into that. That's going to be very lighthearted, very fun. And so watch season 1, episode 1. Start your rewatch now and watch it with us. And we'll also be, again, like I said, the follow-up episode to that will be our author interview. And then after that, we're going to tackle Whistleblower, third book in Jen Lyon's Senator's Wife trilogy. And Haley already started reading it, so slow down. Slow down, girl. I need to catch up.
Well, I work so much, I have to start it now.
I know, I know. Read it on your plane to Montana when you go visit.
Oh, trust me, I will.
Yeah, at least it's quiet. It's not like the video where you watch Disobedience in the
Oh
library.
my gosh. Yeah, no kidding.
Oh my gosh. Yes, guys, leave us a review so we can read it on the pod. We would love to do that. Talk to us. Find our social medias in the show description below. And I hope you guys enjoyed this book. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. DM them to us. We shall talk about them for sure. And yeah,
Thanks for hanging out with us again.
we'll talk to you guys soon.
Bye.
Bye.